Hi, everybody, and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know. You could say that we three are lovers of the classical world. We love things and old books and each other and talking about stuff. And so welcome to our podcast where we talk about all those old things.
That's right.
And I'm here. My name is AJ Hindenburg. I'm joined by Graham Donaldson.
Hey, hey.
And Thomas Magby.
Hey.
And today we're talking about stuff from Thomas.
Guys, so this episode is going to be coming out on the 12th in 2 short days. It's the most important day of the year. Guys, what day is that?
The 12th?
The 2 days after the 12th, preferably? Oh. Yeah.
The Feast of St. Valentine.
Mid-solstice?
Is it actually the Feast of St. Valentine? Is that what we celebrate?
That has always been my assumption.
He was it's Valentino. He's Italian.
Is that true?
No.
That is not true.
That's definitely
Don't
not
you know
true.
St. Valentine? He was a slave and he was bought by a bunch of Irish and then he converted them. And then he left and then he came back as bishop and then he drove all the snakes out of Ireland. That's why there's no snakes in Ireland.
But
and we buy each other flowers.
I had no idea if he came from Italy before that, but anyway, here we are. So yes, this being the week of Valentine's Day, I thought we would try and take a few romantic lessons from the classical world.
Oh yeah,
you're getting excited for this? Okay,
Thomas Magby.
I feel like a lot of those
Love.
swirl into tragedy.
Wait, what?
Well, we've got Romeo and Juliet, we've got Pyramus and Thisbe, we've got. I mean, there's just so many that just end. Real poorly.
No.
So are we taking lessons on how not to?
No. The correct way to
commit double suicide.
The correct way to get to learn things from old books is to just read them and apply them directly into our lives. Yeah.
Do exactly what they've done.
Yeah, exactly.
So, a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. So I got a couple of those, and then hopefully you all will be thinking of these as we go through them. Mm-hmm. So most of these are taken from things that we've talked about in previous episodes. So hopefully these are relatable. Actually, Graham and AJ know more about these works than I do. So yeah. So I have 8 tips here, and then I think Graham and AJ might think of a few as we talk through this. If not, we got more to talk about after that. All right, so first thought to prepare you for this Valentine's Day. Just because a poem is called romantic, it doesn't mean that you should read it to your special someone. So here is a work, you can pronounce this better than I can. It's from Wordsworth. What's the name of the poem, Graham?
Elegiac Stanzas.
Suggested by a picture of Peel Castle in a storm, painted by Sir George Beaumont. That's the name of the poem. Doesn't that sound like the kind of thing that you want to read to that special someone on Valentine's Day?
Gets the engine going.
Yeah.
Depends how good Sir George Beaumont was at painting.
Well, let me read you a couple lines from this. Oh, 'tis a passionate work, yet wise and well. Well chosen is the spirit that is here, that hulk which labors in the deadly swell, this rueful sky, this pageantry of fear, and this huge castle, standing here sublime. I love to see the look from which it braves, cased in the unfeeling armor of old time, the lightning, the fierce wind, the trampling waves. Just kind of gets that Valentine's feeling, doesn't it?
It's true.
Later fierce and stormy heart. I don't see any problems.
Later on, he calls it "thou hoary pile."
Yeah. So clearly, that's
he's talking about his own muscles. You guys are not hitting the metaphor here.
I would have planted thee, thou hoary pile, amid a world how different from this, beside a sea that could not cease to smile, and tranquil land beneath a sky of bliss. Still not. I'm not so sure that this is a great idea for that special someone on Valentine's Day.
Well, romantic just means strong feelings of emotion.
So right, all strong feelings should be expressed all the time, right? Isn't that?
Crank it up to 11 and that's express them as hard as possible.
So this seems like a really, really good idea, right? Well, so number 2, so just because you shouldn't read certain types of poetry doesn't mean that poetry altogether is a thing that you should throw out. So poetry is still a great idea. So here's an ancient source of poetry. This is from the book of the Bible, the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. Behold, you're beautiful, my love. Behold, you're beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats sleeping down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost its young. I think
they always give birth to twins.
Yeah, always give birth to twins. So this is a really...
All I can imagine is just whenever he sees her, what he hears is a host of barn animals. Just that's what he's imagining her hair is.
Which
just goats yelling.
But that's the forbidden book. That's the one that that's what the Hebrew boys were not allowed to read until they were older.
Yeah, well, clearly we cater to a more mature audience. Yes, that are preparing for this.
Something may. And this is just feel me out on this. Okay. Something may be lost in translation.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 1-to-1.
I mean, think about how much they had to compare things to.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I mean,
towers.
We have
lambs.
we have a wealth of imagery here in our modern world, but what was their day-to-day? Their day-to-day was usually animals and towers.
Right, sure. But
how far had they traveled? Not far. Had they seen jewels? Not necessarily. It was all like, what have I seen that is white? Well, a dove.
A dove.
What have I seen that looks fluffy? Goats.
But
right?
because it was written down a long time ago, we should just repeat it word for word today. It translates perfectly to today.
Yeah, I've actually tried this. It works pretty well.
Yeah, so I hope you've also compared someone's neck to the Tower of David, built in rows of stone, or it hangs on it hangs 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Like this translates 1-to-1. This is perfect for.
Well, she did wear a lot of turtlenecks,
made of metal.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm into it.
She was also necklaces.
No disagreement.
Turtlenecks and necklaces. It was a pretty apt comparison.
Oh, totally fine. All right, so maybe more in the vein of what books that we've talked about more thoroughly here. AJ, from a book you teach, there's an incident between Achilles and Agamemnon over a girl that Agamemnon takes. What's the story that happens there?
Achilles had been given a prize. Her name was Briseis, and he liked her. He thought she was pretty awesome. But she doesn't really matter as much in the scene.
What
happens is Agamemnon has also stolen a prize, and turns out that she was the daughter of a priest of Apollo, and he prayed to Apollo and got Apollo all mad about this because he had come and tried to ask for her back, and Agamemnon had been really mean. And you shouldn't be mean to a priest of Apollo. So they find out that this is the case, and they have to give her back because otherwise disease will ravage the troops from Apollo. And he's like, fine, if I have to give my girl back, I better get a different girl. And Achilles is like, whoa, man, we don't have like girls just laying around on the beach. Everything's been portioned out. And he says, fine, if I have to give up mine, I'm going to come take somebody else's. Maybe yours. And all of this would have happened in front of other kings and with troops standing around. So more than losing a girl, which hurt for sure, it was the story of a smear on his honor.
But clearly the main takeaway from that story is that you got to stand up for your girl, right?
He didn't, though. He later be taken by another guy.
Yeah, but then, sat out of the battle. Clearly it was because of the honor of the woman he cared for so much. So in the same way, we should be... Wait, what?
Yeah, she just...
this isn't...
She was sort of taken, and then he...
Wait, what?
I think they eventually tried to give her back. And
how'd that go?
He said, I'm going home. Oh. And then eventually came back to battle when his best friend died.
These classical heroes are so romantic. Man, okay. Yeah. How about... we'll try one from Paradise Lost... Graham, this will be a story that you know. So the comment is that birds of a feather flock together. There are two lovers in Paradise Lost who are very alike one another.
It's true.
Does that ring a bell, Graham?
It does.
Donaldson? Yeah.
So when I think what you're talking about is when Satan is sitting in heaven and he's thinking,
oh no,
he's like,
you know what? Please no. This is not fun.
I don't understand.
For Valentine's Day, really?
Yeah.
This is where we're going to go?
Tips. Yeah, why not?
He's contemplating how he can take over heaven, and he's like, "Can I do it? I think I can do this thing." And then he gathers all of his troops together to plot an assault of God's throne. And then Satan gets a really weird headache, and he kind of keels over, and his head splits open, and out pops a little creature that immediately sort of takes the form of a pretty lady. And it says in Paradise Lost, and all were amazed to see it. And this pretty lady comes up, and everyone's kind of freaked out. And Satan looks at her, and he's like, oh, there's something about her. She reminds me of something. She reminds me of me. And therefore immediately falls in love with her. And they spend time together in heaven, and she becomes pregnant with his child. And then when the whole throwdown happens and they're all thrown into hell, she is also cast into hell. Later on, Satan sees her, but her name... he sees her, but her she sort of, hasn't aged well. The bottom half of her is no longer pretty lady. It is now like nasty snake serpent, maybe a scorpion.
Oh.
And she's given birth to Satan's child, and Satan's child's name is Death, and her name is Sin.
And he's kind of shadowy and holds a spear, right?
Yeah, Death's kind of shadowy and holds a spear, and Sin is kind of shrewish, and God has set them up as the gatekeepers of hell. And when Satan sees them, he realizes that Sin is kind of his lover, but also was born from him, so in that way it's kind of his daughter. And then Death is kind of his child. Anyway, it's this whole gross, incestuous
it's a real House of
thing.
Atreus moment.
It's a real House of Atreus moment. But then you realize, Satan has sort of created his own dark, perverted version of God's Holy Trinity, where you have God who loves the Son, and the Son who is obedient to the Father, and the love between the Father and the Son works itself out in the Spirit. And then you've got Satan and Sin, and they've got this sort of gross, incestuous thing going on, and then death is resulting of that. So where God and the Son produces life, Satan and sin produces death, and it's kind of this.
Right, but I'm pretty sure you said this. Like, the actual correct reading of Paradise Lost is that Satan's the hero. So, like, actually...
Oh, gosh.
Wait, what? No. So, actually, this is like...
Thomas, you're sucking the air out of Valentine's Day. We're all going to be...
Wait, I don't understand.
We're going to be bummed.
This doesn't...
Are we going to do good
Thomas,
ones?
are you as far as the Paradise Lost as it goes, are you a Satanist?
No, of course not. But I thought you didn't say that.
I said that there is definitely a school of thought that people think that Satan's the hero when
this is awkward.
That means they finish at book 4.
Okay, maybe
they didn't really read the rest of it, where he becomes a frog and then they catch him and he's like, "Do you know who I am?"
Oh, fun fact! Yeah. So if you were animating a movie and you had an animated frog. And you needed to pick a voice actor for that frog.
Do you want to be that voice actor? Oh,
Drake.
Okay.
Think about it.
Why?
Listen to him talking and in his songs, and imagine him as an animated frog, and you won't be able to imagine anything else.
That's
true.
How did this occur to you?
I was listening to a Drake song.
I'm so
because
sorry.
I too
you're Canadian.
am from the 6.
Yeah. Good, great, okay.
I am.
Yeah.
And I was like, he kind of sounds like an animated frog, and I've sort of run with that idea.
I'm glad you got to share that with the listening audience today.
So after we finish all your gross examples of love, Thomas, are we going to have time for beautiful ones?
I don't understand what you're saying. So AJ, how about that love can civilize us? Does this ring a bell from any books that you teach in your 9th grade class? Maybe between maybe an ancient Babylonian, maybe an ancient clay tablet story.
Are you thinking Gilgamesh?
Oh yeah,
the love can civilize us.
Yeah. What happens to Enkidu?
Oh, I mean, so Enkidu gets brought into civilization, but it's kind of a ploy of the gods to make Gilgamesh not be awful anymore. And then their friendship ends up getting them sort of in bro trouble. Yeah, because they go and do a bunch of big adventures and get themselves in trouble, and then Enkidu dies, and Gilgamesh freaks out and loses his mind.
Yeah, but like he's glad it happened, right? Like the journey is the destination, you know?
I've never said that.
Wait. Oh my gosh, this is awkward.
Wait, the journey is the destination?
I don't know. That's a Hallmark Channel thing.
The destination is the journey, right? Isn't that what people say?
No, the journey is the destination. Like, you're not trying to get somewhere. Like, the journey is where you're trying to get to. All right, so that didn't work. Okay, so love doesn't civilize us. How about this one might be kind of like a good one. Graham, that communication is important in a relationship.
I would agree.
Is there a Shakespearean work that you are familiar with where this might be taught?
Are you referring to Romeo and Juliet?
Of course I'm referencing Romeo and Juliet.
Well, as we all know, keeping things as buried deep and dark at nighttime and never telling your family about anything is the healthiest way to start a romance. So Romeo loves Juliet, but he keeps it secret, and then Friar Lawrence, seeing the opportunity to maybe unite the two houses, decides to keep this secret, and then they all have to work at having this no longer be something that, or having this be something that is not known, and so the big conclusion that have the students come to is, love done in secret is not a healthy thing. This is why at marriages we sort of put two people in front of the entire community. And then the priest turns to the community and says, all right, everybody, you guys cool with this? Anybody not cool with this, say so now. And then someone doesn't say it. And then there's that like awkward moment where everyone starts looking around to see if anybody's going to say something. And then he's like, all right, everybody, are you going to help make sure this marriage works? And everybody says, we will. And that's why we have that, because secret loves never work. And is that your...
I feel like you're making like an actual point right now.
I am making an actual point.
Okay, I'll take that. So we're 1 for 6 right now, so we're doing pretty good. How about... I'm not sure if this is so much a romance tip as just a relational tip, AJ, that we should listen to our significant others about when to go to work and when not to go to work.
I'm having...
Isn't this Caesar?
We should listen about them.
Yeah, like listen to your significant other,
especially if they had like a bad.
Yeah, they had like a bad dream.
Bad
kind of like
got
some bad feelings. Just like you gotta trust your spouse, you know.
Yeah. I know that you're calling into question the whole Portia and Brutus marriage. Or is that what? No, you're talking about Caesar and
Caesar?
Calphurnia. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Because I know that Portia also had some weird broodings about that day and was really sad and didn't want him to go, but Caesar wanted to. She had a horrible dream where he was a bleeding person and there were 1,000 fountains of blood coming from his body, and a bunch of Romans came up and washed their hands in it. And she said, Caesar,
what could it mean?
I just don't understand.
That freaks me out. And he said, okay, for you, I'll stay home. And the guys, the senators that were sent to sort of turn his bent about it, said, it's not a bad omen. This is a good omen. It means that from you, all of Rome will suck reviving blood. Your blood will make Rome healthy. And even then, he wasn't getting the whole, like, my blood will make Rome healthy thing. And he says, yes, that is great. Calphurnia, you are silly, and your dreams seem ridiculous. I'm going to go. And so he goes to the Senate and is that day killed.
Yeah, so you should listen to your significant other, right?
He didn't, though, in this case.
And that's the warning of Julius Caesar.
Sorry,
yeah, I guess.
Listen to your wife.
Okay, I'll take this one. Okay.
Yeah.
2 out of 7. Number 8 is to listen to prophecy and to not marry your mom. I think this feels like good advice. I think we've covered this ad nauseum in the Theban cycle. So I don't think there's much more to say on that one.
Yeah, let's just trundle past that one.
Well, I think that's 8 incredibly helpful tips for Valentine's Day. So
I can think of more.
Wait, this is good. Let's go.
There's tons more.
Yeah. When all of these were like 100% serious and like actually good.
Like you may show up in a foreign country and really get on. Let's see if you guys, maybe we can play like quiz show. All right, you show up in a foreign country and you really get along with the head of this country. And so you and her spend a lot of time together. In fact, you become lovers. But there's this little gnawing thing in the back of your mind that you have a mission from the gods. And that mission from the gods is to go and found a mighty city and potentially a great empire. And you float this idea past your lover, and she doesn't seem cool with it. In fact, you notice that she's been stacking lots of firewood recently. Who are we talking about?
Dido.
Yeah. Oh, poor Dido.
Dido and Aeneas.
I always think about Dido when I think of that girl that had that like 10-minute long singing career named Dido, who like did the Eminem song. Poor Dido.
The Eminem song.
Wasn't she on Eminem? She was on the Stan. Wasn't she Stan?
It was good. It was the you ever heard that song?
No, I've heard of it.
She sung a hook on an Eminem song.
Got it. This makes more sense.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the only lover one I can remember. There's probably a lot more.
So don't stack up firewood around your lover? Is that okay?
Or
this is good advice.
Well, I actually have sympathies for Aeneas. I mean, maybe he shouldn't have led Dido on, but he had a job, he had a mission. He wanted to go. He had something he had to do. He had like the burden of his family. And
I think if he had his druthers, he would have stayed.
You think so?
Oh yeah, he was. I think he was planning on it until Hermes came down and said you had to move on.
I was like, dude, yeah, you got a mission to do.
Yeah,
it's true.
I got one.
Yeah, go for it.
So how to do this? You shouldn't get with the most fashionable dude in London.
Okay.
Even if he seems just to be... You couldn't believe that he's a bad guy. He's got such a fresh, young face.
Now, is this especially if I'm an actress? Should I not get with?
Yeah, if you're an actress and he professes love and really, he loves you for your art.
I know. And my mom had some worries about him, but So maybe this is Dorian
But
Gray.
mom is always dramatic.
That's the right takeaway. This feels like a good one.
Yeah, it's Dorian Gray.
Yeah, I like that one. Don't have paintings made of you. Maybe I don't know.
You, in your wild days of youth, you sired a couple of bastard kids. These things happen.
Oh my goodness!
But then you were sitting in a garden.
Oh my goodness!
But then
it happens.
You were sitting in a garden one day, and you heard a bunch of kids reading a book, and singing a song, and all of a sudden you had a transcendental moment of God's presence. Yeah. And in a few short years, you were a bishop.
So steal fruit is your takeaway?
Yes, and then exactly. You were super guilty about eating pears. Stealing fruit.
Pears,
Who am I talking about, Thomas?
You were talking about Augustine. Thank you very much.
That's right.
Yes. Pronounced correctly as Augustine, right?
And
Augustinus.
Yeah. Augustinus. I'm so sorry. This is good. I like this.
If you've been away for a long time, and you said, "Hey, if I've been away and the baby we just sired grows a beard, you should marry a different guy," and you've been gone,
I'm probably dead
long enough for beard to happen.
Yeah.
In this case, you should dawdle around for 10 years. Hang out with other ladies, totally, and then eventually arrive home and murder all her boyfriends.
Yep, exactly. So just to be clear, the lesson is that it's okay to hang out on islands as long as they're far away from your kingdom with other women. Is that the takeaway from this?
Well, he kind of had to.
Okay, sure.
The first time, and then after that, he didn't have to quite as much.
That's good. Odysseus. This is
talking about the Odyssey.
Like this is good.
Poor guy.
Good. Graham and AJ, loyal listener, Graham and AJ are currently looking at AJ's bookshelf, trying to come up with other examples to talk about. So this is fun.
Yeah.
We all found one.
You
thinking through it
are a troubled youth. And you may or may not have had some kind of relationship with this cute but not so noble girl in your kingdom. But then, you go off to college. But you have to come home because of a tragedy in your hometown. Your father has died. And when you come home, you realize that your mother has married your uncle, and you now have a new uncle daddy.
Fast.
Weirdly
fast.
In your grumpy mood, you have the ghost of your dead father impart upon you his desire for revenge on the land of the living and on his brother who murdered him.
Yep.
You don't know if it's actually the ghost of your father or a demon sent to tempt you. But you decide that you're going to be a real dirtbag to the girl that you may or may not have had a relationship with. And whenever you hang out with her, you basically, skateboard around her and say, like, you used to be cool, and make sexual innuendo jokes at her while you slowly break her heart every scene.
Oh.
Who are we talking about, boys?
Is our lesson don't listen to Ghost Dad?
Yeah.
Okay, that seems like an important one. This is our boy Hamlet.
And the lesson is don't be a dirtbag.
That's also a good lesson.
Yeah. Don't involve your girlfriend in your machinations of revenge murder.
That's true. Thomas, I'm bummed.
Sorry. What have we done?
I got one more.
Okay, good. Yeah.
All right, you're dating this guy, and he seems real nice.
Okay.
And you've been physical.
Oh.
It's a physical thing.
Wow. Okay.
And it feels all right, but his rule is that the lights got to be off, and you can never ever look at him ever, and he'll only come and hang out with you if the lights are off. Only with the lights off.
Yeah,
that's the rule. He says if you turn on a light, it is over.
Is this the one where no one else can see this person?
But your sisters are super jealous.
Your sisters are really, because they're, you've got a man.
They also kind of think I'm crazy,
really nice.
right?
You're also kind of living in a sweet castle, and you might be crazy. And so they convince you that you could be married to a giant centipede. Or some other crazy minotaur monster. The lights, they're off. And so in fear, one night you grab a candle and you have to look, and it turns out he's not a centipede.
Oh, good.
He is, in fact, as hot as you had imagined. And in his hotness, you are shocked, and you let wax drip from your candle onto him.
And he wakes up.
And he wakes up and freaks out and says, I said only with the lights off! And then he leaves you alone.
It's a C.S. Lewis one, but I always forget the name of it.
She's Psyche.
The original was Cupid and Psyche. The C.S. Lewis one was a little bit different. She was living in a field. The true one, she holds a candle and the wax drips onto Cupid. And the reason Cupid was keeping it quiet was because his mom really didn't like the girl.
Is that why?
Yeah. I think she was jealous of Psyche's beauty. And so he's like, I like Psyche too, and I want to hang out with her. And he had to keep it on the hush hush. And then she had a whole bunch of other things that they gave her tasks, and it was this whole thing.
You are a power couple.
Okay.
And you are going places. Your husband is ambitious, but you feel like with your help and with your subtle encouragements that you can spur him on to really kill it. Okay. There's a moment when you're at the tipping point of your husband's ambition. And so what you decide to do is pray to the Dark Lord that he takes away all of your feminine wiles and all of your feminine sympathies so that you can have a heart of stone, ice, and bloody resolve. Meanwhile, your husband has invited his boss over for dinner. And because of a terrible storm, probably because your wife is praying to the Dark Lord, your boss decides to stay overnight because it's too dangerous to go home. And you murder him, you wade in his blood, you return to your wife completely covered in his gore, and she goes,
after sort of wiping
finally, a man. You're
after
finally
sort of
a man.
wiping the knives on some other drunks that were in the house.
Yeah.
Whoops. Like, what did you do, you guys, with those knives that you're holding? Don't you remember?
She's like, finally, you're the man I married.
What is the...
You don't know what this is?
That's Macbeth?
This is Macbeth.
Okay,
Macbeth.
Yeah. I haven't seen the new... I want to see the new version of it with Fassbender and Marion Cotillard. I hear it's really good, but I haven't seen it. Anyway, man, happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
on that cheery note.
I have one from
good.
Lemort to Arthur.
Good.
It is... Whoa, not appropriate.
Yeah, let's not do that.
We're not going to go
there.
there.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. All right, so... As always, what are we doing here? First off, it's just fun to go back and remember all of these wonderful memories from the classical world and ancient literature. Another piece of it is that there are sometimes... I think it is entirely possible to be too quick to jump and say that because we read a thing in an old book means that we should always do that thing. That in reading we should be somewhat critical. I don't know, that there are crazy things that happen in these books that we read. What's that... I think, AJ, I've heard you say it before, that it was in some controversy related to Harry Potter, and this person said that they would... you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Keep talking, I'll look up the quote.
So it's something to the effect of, I don't want my children to be reading about magic and death and inappropriate things. I only let them read Shakespeare. And it's like, I don't quite know. You might not have read Shakespeare very closely. So I just always think it's fun to go back and... just remember what's in all those stories. I'm trying to riff right now, and I'm not doing a very good job.
Oh, he'll find them.
He'll find the quote eventually.
I got the quote. All right.
Yeah.
It says, he is a principal, and he says, buying sensational books is like feeding your child with spoons of added sugar, Whiting wrote. Heaps of it. And when the child becomes addicted, it will seek more and more, which, if related to books, fills the bank vaults of those who write unsensitive books for young children. This guy praised the old-fashioned values of traditional literature, offering as examples William Shakespeare, John Keats, Charles Dickens, and Shelley. He didn't specify whether he meant Percy Shelley, the author of Necessity of Atheism, or Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein.
Either way.
And he adds, beware the devil in the text, choose beauty for your young children. It makes me think that this principal has never cracked a Shakespeare in his life, right? Because... if he doesn't want the devil in the books, he's looking in the wrong place if he's cracking Shakespeare, right? If he's worried about sensational things and ghosts and murders, and he's looking in the wrong spots.
I dig it. So then, Graham, to your question then of like, what about actual things to talk about? I was hoping to spend the rest of our time talking about Beatrice in Dante. Mm-hmm. So, AJ, you might be the better one to start out. You teach Dante's Inferno. Mm-hmm. Who is this Beatrice?
Beatrice was not Dante's wife. She was a person in Florence that he became infatuated with as a young man, and she was quite young, and then she died quite young. And I think because and they never really spoke that much. They didn't have that close of a relationship. His was sort of a distant reverence. I think you could only call it infatuation.
Yes.
And then she died, and that he could never become disabused of that infatuation. So it grew, and eventually she came to represent for him all that is divine and good and pure in the world, and then she became this ideal. And for a little while, he wavered and became enamored of the lady of philosophy, and then he's like, oh no, I've totally forgot Beatrice, and then he went back to Beatrice, and then he has her as sort of this heavenly divine lady in his books next to Mary, and same level as the Mary,
right?
And she's the one who sends Virgil to guide him through the Inferno.
Yeah. So,
but for Dante, she is the embodiment of all that is, all of the virtues and all that is good and pure and innocent, and I think
right. So it wasn't she. She eventually represented divine goodness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think we always rush to be like, oh, Dante had it bad for this girl he never met. He just saw at church every Sunday or whatever. But it's not that. I mean. And we talked. I think we definitely talked about this on one of our podcasts about Dante. That what he's doing is not some sort of like unrequited love,
right?
But that this person and how she carries herself and how she has existed in the world and then dying young has embodied all of those things has embodied all of those Christian virtues that are inherently attractive. Mm-hmm. And so then he has her be the character that comes to help him in his own quest and spiritual journey when he is lost in the woods.
Yeah. So we'll get there. I think there are some weird parts to it that we might want to suss out and talk more about. But I think it's totally fair to start out at the place of like, how would Dante have described Beatrice, or like this affection that he has for her? And of course, he would describe it the way that you all are, of it's an honor or reverence. It's not anything inappropriate. It's not like in place of his wife or any of those strange things like that. So you've covered all the high points here. So there was an actual person named Beatrice. It might be just a helpful thing to start with. She then did die young, and Dante continued to write about her. There are two main spots. One is the Divine Comedy, which is what AJ was just talking about. But there's also a book, the Vita Nuova, the Vita Nova, by Dante, that is essentially, it's about his encounters. It's about Beatrice. So they only ever encountered each other twice, and they never spoke very much. But it's very funny to hear him talk about her. So I'll start reading a little bit of it. This is Dante. This is in the first chapter of the Vita Nova. 9 times the heaven of the light had returned to where it was at my birth, almost to the very same point of its orbit, when the glorious lady of my mind first appeared before my eyes, she whom many called Beatrice, without even knowing that was her name. She had already been in this life long enough for the heaven of the fixed stars to have moved toward the east 1/12 of a degree since she was born, so that she was at the beginning of her 9th year when she appeared to me, and I saw her when I was almost at the end of my 9th. She appeared, dressed in a very stately color, a subdued and dignified crimson, girdled and adorned in a manner that was fitting for her young age. At that time, truly, I say, the vital spirit which dwells in the innermost chamber of the heart started to tremble so powerfully that its disturbance reached all the way to the slightest of my pulses. And trembling, it spoke these words, and then they're in Latin, which means, here is a God stronger than I who comes to rule me. That's the quote that's right there. At that time, the animal spirit which dwells in the high chamber to which all the spirits of sensation carry their perceptions began to marvel. And speaking especially to the spirits of vision, it said, another thing in Latin, at that time, the natural spirit which dwells where, anyway, he keeps quoting this Latin thing. Let me get it to, so after so many days had passed that it was exactly 9 years since the above named apparition of this most gracious of women, on the last day of these days, that marvelous lady appeared to me dressed in pure white, between 2 gracious women, both of whom were older than she. So they're walking in the street, and it's Beatrice and these 2 older people. And passing along the street, she turned her eyes in the direction of where I stood, gripped by fear, and thanks to her ineffable benevolence and grace, which now is rewarded in eternal life, she greeted me with such power that then and there I seemed to see to the farthest reaches of beatitude. So Beatrice turns around, says hi, and he's just like blissed out of his mind at even...
You didn't have this at 9 years old?
So this is 9 years later. So he has the 9 years old.
So he's 18 now.
Yeah, and so 18. And then she'll die.
We've all been there.
I think in her 20s, and they're about the same age, so a few years after this. He goes on and he has this dream where there's this vision and this like figure tells Beatrice to like eat Dante's heart, and so then Beatrice does that, and so then anyway, there's a fun metaphor there. But
we've all been there too.
Well, let's talk more about that. So there is like a sweetness in this infatuation, totally. Right?
Yeah.
Say more about that.
Oh, 9 years old. She's 9 years old. He sees her walking into church, I think it was, or
is like a May Day. I think.
Yeah. And there's just this moment of where it just sort of strikes him, her, coy, innocent beauty, just hits him full in the face, and just sort of this other world opens up to him, a world of the power of innocence and beauty and purity, and his heart wants to be in that. His heart wants to be completely, fully engulfed in all that is good and true and beautiful, and he sees it symbolized in this person. Now, we know that Beatrice was just a person, and if she had not died young and Dante had married her and lived together, that it wouldn't have taken on the symbolism that it had, because she would have been a regular, ordinary person who would have loved Dante and would have disappointed Dante, and all the sort of things that happen in the course of a human life. But because she died young, he crystallizes that moment in his youth and locates it in the relationship with this person, this sort of childish, innocent, first love kind of feeling, and then extrapolates that to talk about how this is the feelings of heaven, that this is what God has called us to, that this is that she is more of an angelic, heavenly figure than just like a person. So I think it's really beautiful.
And maybe the easiest way to see that it is beautiful is what it results in Dante.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It is the motivation. It's what points him toward studying theology and then creating the Divine Comedy to write this Vita Nova that is more about like how God has blessed Earth with such beauty, such as Beatrice. Like he doesn't. The terminating point is not Beatrice herself. It is like what Beatrice represents. So
or the kingdom she is a part of, if you want to say it that way.
Yeah.
And then that vision of who she is and what she represents for him is a strong enough vision that when he is in a dark place as a man in his middle age, and he's banished from his kingdom, and there's been sort of bloodshed and calumny and all sorts of his name being dragged through the mud, that it is the longing for that vision that drives him back into searching for God.
Yes.
I'm hesitant to say that beauty alone can't save you, and Dante wouldn't say that beauty alone can save you, but he is definitely the experience of Beatrice and the knowledge of beauty is enough to remind him there is something more and greater than the pain or than the sort of the temporal existence of nasty life, and so that hope is what sort of he has, and then to have Beatrice be the one that sends him the guide to take him through hell and purgatory up to heaven. It's like his experience and relationship with the beautiful takes him to the true and the good.
That's good. So even when Beatrice eventually will become his guide, it's to take him to God.
Yes. Yeah.
Not just
she's not the end. I mean, she's the love he has for Beatrice is a conduit to which he has a relationship with God.
This is basically summarizing what you just said, but this is Canto 1 of Dante's Paradiso. So this is the point. So Beatrice takes over as Dante's guide, I think 4 books from the end of the Purgatorio, and then will guide him from then on. So this is from Canto 1 of the Paradiso. When I saw Beatrice turn upon her left and look to heaven to gaze into the sun, no eagle ever held a gaze so firm. As a reflecting ray will follow upon the first, and in a glance, an instant rise, just like a pilgrim longing to turn home. So she instilled her gazing through my eyes into my powers of fancy, and I too stared at the sun more than our sight can bear. With our weak powers on earth, one may not do what there one may, thanks to the special place created as the proper home for man. But that idea of her gaze translates into Dante's gaze. It's that beauty points towards something, and that then redirects Dante. So that's what Beatrice is doing, and I think that's the important part for Beatrice. She becomes more Dante's muse than the real person Beatrice. But I think of this in opposition to another young character who meets an attractive female at a young age, Pip and Estella.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, AJ, who are Pip and Estella, and where do they come from?
This is from Dickens's book, Great Expectations. And Pip is a young fellow that lives with his sister and his sister's husband. And it's awful. She is a little bit abusive, although his sort of new stepdad is kind of awesome. And he falls in love with this girl because he's called to play at this fancy lady's house. And there's a fancy young girl there. We find out later that the fancy lady, her entire goal is to take revenge upon men. So she is tuning this young being to be horrible to men, to be incredibly desirable, to be beautiful, to be well-spoken, but then to be cold and harsh. It's like
rich girls, man.
Creating an ice cube.
Goodness, what? Oh my!
If you're a listening rich girl, please pay no attention to the Canadian.
Ignore that. Yeah,
we Americans like rich things.
that is
so.
True.
It doesn't end up well. He sort of becomes the waves that beat himself against this pier for ages and ages and ages, and he breaks himself, and then eventually, it's left up in the air what happens after they finally meet. In what is an incredible coincidence, years later, like a decade later, they go back to the same home for the first time on the same day.
That's the he added that ending, didn't he?
Because both endings that happens.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
In any case, it's kind of left up to the reader what happens.
Yeah.
But the contrast I think you're getting at is Pip sees Estella as his end and only sole source of happiness, and by holding her up, Estella, his star, right, as holding her up as the focus of everything. That will make him happy. He's sort of at the mercy of her whims and the mercy of her, her feelings. And she, being bred to have no emotions or to cage off her emotions and be cruel to boys, but be very beautiful, is not a healthy place for Pip to be.
No.
But Dante is not doing that.
Correct.
But so there's a sense of that the infatuation and the love. Is supposed to be a means to the end of drawing the heart to God, as opposed to being the end. Those strong feelings you have are not. Lewis talks about this a lot, and this is sort of the dangers of romanticism, is that the thing that elicits the strong feeling is not the thing you want. The thing that elicits the strong feeling is sort of
a longing for our participation in beauty.
Yes, for participation in beauty, and it will only be satisfied when it gets to the real source of that beauty. So anything short than the top of paradise is not going to cut it.
I mean, part of it is that Estella isn't exactly the most upstanding person. She doesn't orient him towards anything better, and I think that's what you're getting at.
Well,
but
she's
it's not
pretty.
It's not just his fault. It's definitely hers.
Estella's also. Yeah.
She doesn't tune him better. She doesn't say, "Listen, you shouldn't be.
You don't want me. You want God."
Yeah, she never does that. So he ends up hitting against a brick wall rather than a channel or conduit, which is what happens to Dante. Right? He sort of funnels himself through her to something divine.
Yeah, and I guess some people like to make much of. So Dante would write all these poems about Beatrice. He didn't write any poems about his wife, but I think it matters that Beatrice eventually isn't a real person. Like even in the Vita Nova, when I didn't read the whole thing, but when you flip through it, he is stylizing the story. He's making up days, like everything. Unless you believe that things literally happened like 9 years to the day after each other, or I don't know.
Yeah, Dante is not being autobiographical. Yes. I mean, it's just not what poetry was then.
Sure.
We have it now where we want the poet or the writer to be authentically real about their life, and if it didn't actually happen, then it's not a good story. Like there's all those hubbubs about people that write these autobiographies about terrible things that happen, and then fact finders go and they're like, "Whoa, this isn't actually true,"
right?
And that's sort of the modern our modern dislike of I don't know, realism, or our modern dislike of fantasy, or maybe not fantasy, but sort of creating stories. We want things to actually be real. We want realism. We want the artist to be the art, especially when it comes to writing and poetry. Whereas Dante the man and Dante the poet are very different.
Sure. Yes.
And Dante the man is lost to history, and Dante the man was known only to his wife, and they had their own love and their own private day-to-day affairs. And then Dante the poet is a constructed artistic representation of Dante the man that is meaning that is sort of functioning differently.
I think,
and it's just something we don't have a tolerance for. We don't have a taste for. We want the artist to be the art. We don't like having somebody. We don't like having that separation between life and work, if you want to put it that way.
I also think that if he had written about his wife, he brings himself into several dangers. Number one, she doesn't like the poem. That's a that's a bummer. Sure. Number two, he airs out their dirty laundry. She's not going to be happy. And I think most of all, if he writes about his wife, people could say, well, he's just trying to earn points with his wife. Right? It becomes something personal, and could the invective that it's selfish could definitely be leveled at him had he written about his wife. Mm-hmm. Right? Of course, he writes a poem to his wife. She loves him more at the end of that day. And if he writes about Beatrice, someone dead, someone that can never see these poems, it becomes rather about the beauty itself than about any selfish ideas that he has in his mind, right? He can never gain by writing about Beatrice, whereas he can gain materially by writing about his wife.
I'd never thought of it that way, but imagine there being these lost set of poems that were only between him and his wife, that weren't for gaining credit outside of them, weren't for gaining popularity or notoriety. There's something to that.
If he writes about his wife, even then, I mean, she could even level the thing saying, you are trying to gain money off of me, and I don't appreciate that. So there's all sorts of problems that come into it when one writes about their relationships. Sure. And Taylor Swift might be aware of some of them.
You should definitely write poems for your wife. Just don't publish them. Just have them be the things of the private culture of the family, right? Sure. Like you've created these songs and stories inside the confines of your own private world. I think that's
and then when she kicks it, publish them.
Okay. Then you're good to go. Good. Okay, I like it. Yeah. Get something out.
Please don't do that.
Well, I was going to say, and there's also when you're writing a poem, you don't want, if you put someone's name in there, if you make it real too specific, the poem's not going to ring. Like, she walks in beauty like the night is way better than Linda walks in beauty like the night.
That's good. Yeah.
I know some pretty Lindas.
Unless you're Linda.
Unless you're Linda.
But there's one Linda who reads that and she's like, I do walk in beauty like the night.
Of cloudless climes and starry skies. And all that's best and dark and bright meets in my aspect, in my eyes.
In Linda's eyes.
That's important. So, again, the main point I'm just trying to get to with this whole Beatrice thing is that in talking about romance and talking about beauty, that beauty is still pointing us to something outside of the object of that beauty. So Beatrice is pointing to God. The problem with Estella is it is a problem with both Pip and Estella, but the terminating point is Estella herself.
It's all tokens and types.
What does that mean?
The example of the love story is the token of the type. So all of those failed love stories that we were talking about, the fact that we were all laughing and going womp womp and all knew that they were bad examples of love is because we have a type in our mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have an example of what it ought to be. Whether or not we can put surgically defined clear borders about what it is good. That's where we're going to have disagreements. Yeah. But we all have an idea of what healthy love ought to look like in a relationship. We have the type, and these tokens, we talk about them and bat them back and forth and say, well, Aeneas was a jerk, or Aeneas was justified, or maybe he should have done this, or maybe he should have done that. We're all appealing to the type. We're all appealing to the standard that we're trying to use the token to define. And Dante is pushing the conversation beyond to its more, well, to the Christian conclusion and to our conclusion, which is that these are the tokens of love, even the good ones, are all part and parcel of the type, which is God's love for creation and our participation in his kingdom. And
good. So we still have a little bit more time at the end. So any thoughts that you all have on just the broader, Graham, this was your question from before. Are we actually going to give good tips? Any stories from antiquity related to love that have actually good examples?
Yeah,
anything about beauty you want to talk about? Yeah,
I think Brutus and Portia is a far better example than Caesar and Calphurnia.
Sure.
She demonstrates that she is faithful. She asks if he can disclose his secrets to her. She proves to herself that she can keep them before she proves to him that she can keep them. She's worried when he leaves. Yep. When she decides to commit suicide in captivity, he is absolutely wrecked. It's a fairly good picture of a decent marriage. And these come rarely, and I think maybe it's not necessarily because love is difficult, which it is, but because it doesn't make for good storytelling usually.
Because you need some sort of conflict.
Yeah, good marriages are pretty boring to listen about.
Yep.
Right? It's not a fun thing. And I have a quote that came to mind earlier.
Enjoyable and satisfying to be in. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That's sure.
I'm not saying that boring is bad.
Right.
I have running water in my house. That's pretty boring, but it's an incredibly good thing.
Yeah.
So here's a quote that came to mind as we were speaking. This is from the Brothers Karamazov. And he says, "I'm sorry I can say nothing more consoling to you, for love in action is a harsh and dreadful thing compared with love in dreams. Love in dreams is greedy for immediate action, rapidly performed and in the sight of all. Men will even give their lives if only the ordeal does not last long, but is soon over, with all looking on and applauding as though on the stage. But active love is labor and fortitude, and for some people too, perhaps, a complete science." So I'm often reminded of that we have in our head this notion of love as sort of a flash in the pan thing, when really it's difficult and strenuous labor and humility and being willing to change and communicate, and all of that hurts and is hard. And I can't help but think that if Dante and Beatrice had hung out more, he would find Beatrice's flaws and that she was awfully into that red dress she was wearing and had all these problems.
He wouldn't have written poems about her, right?
Yeah, if he had gotten to know her better, he wouldn't have written poems. And I think it is the acceptance that comes through all of those hard labors that binds a marriage. And I'm saying this as a single man to two married men, so you can let me know if I'm off base here. But knowing someone's flaws completely and then accepting those nonetheless is a powerful thing.
And I push back and say I don't think you accept flaws.
Oh, I mean, knowing the flaws and yet loving them anyway, and then pushing each other towards better.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to accept and ignore.
Yeah.
I meant to see the flaws for what they are and yet still love the person.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite sonnets from Shakespeare. It's Sonnet 130. I'll just read it because I'll be curious how you all react to this if you agree with it. "My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasant sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go, my mistress when she walks treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare." That maybe gets more at AJ's of, like, there are imperfections in like the real people that we interact with, but no, there's still I'm overusing the word beauty, but there's a beauty to like choosing that love and committing to that love, even in seeing the problems in the people around us.
Sure.
That's like with this is not classical anyway, and there's a How I Met Your Mother episode where everyone I know
definitely not classical,
not classical, where everyone points out the flaws of the other person, and it like breaks their ability to talk because they can only see the flaws in the other person. But at the end, they have flaws also. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a necessity to that.
You're talking about other examples of good love in antiquity. The one that I'm just thinking about currently is because I'm teaching it right now is Paradise Lost, where you have Adam and Eve were made for one another, but there's something about what Adam brings to Eve that amplifies her nature, and there's something that Eve brings to Adam that amplifies his nature, that yes, by themselves they could have enjoyed God's presence in the garden, but there's something about being together that sort of brings them to this a higher plane of existence that they couldn't have had if they were apart. I know I've talked about this in earlier podcasts on Paradise Lost, so the Coles Notes version is that Eve desires to civilize and amplify the beauty of the world, to cultivate the beauty of the world. Adam desires to understand and expand and know how things work. Together, he expands the garden by like chopping down trees. She cultivates the garden by planting beautiful plants and turning the world into a garden. He can bring his love of abundance and his abundance to Eve, and she can take his abundance and cultivate it, and then that results in a child. So Adam's abundance and Eve's order mixed together creates new life that bears God's image in the world. Eve couldn't have done that without Adam. All she could have done is just sort of enjoy her own beauty. Adam couldn't have done that without Eve. All he could have done was sort of be a wanderer in the world, experiencing new things. But when they bring those two things together, they can actually create something that bears God's image, with which nothing else in creation does. The angels don't bear God's image. The animals don't bear God's image. Man bears God's image. And so so then there's this scene when Adam sees Eve and he's going to marry her. He wakes up and realizes that she's gone. And then when God formed her out of the rib, and he says this: "When out of hope, behold her not far off, such as I saw her in my dream, adorned with what all earth or heaven could bestow to make her amiable. On she came, led by her heavenly Maker, though unseen, and guided by his voice, not uninformed of nuptial sanctity and marriage rites. Grace was in all her steps, heaven in her eye, in every gesture, dignity, and love." I told my boys in my English class that they should definitely steal those last two lines, and if they ever have to write wedding vows one day, to put those in there. And probably like 80% of the audience will have never read Milton, and so like his new bride's grandma is going to be like, "Oh, he's a keeper," and he can pass those off as his own.
That's good.
So I have two poems, and these are of a different sort. This is from a book called The Devil's Book of Verse.
Oh, no.
And it is poems from poets when they are feeling cranky, when they are feeling jilted, when they are feeling hateful. This is the worst of the worst when it comes to poetry, and there are beefs between poets in here. It will have back and forth between two fellows. And I once brought these poems to a final reading at a poetry class of mine in college. and they were displeased I had brought these. I mean, I think they wanted to feel self-reverential and proud of their own poems, and I brought these, and they're kind of jokes, and no one liked it very much. So reader, take these as they're meant. They're not supposed to be serious. Yeah. They are from men when they are at perhaps their lowest. And so I have two. I thought you might enjoy them. This one is called Upon Some Women by Robert Therick. "Thou who wilt not love, do this. Learn of me what a woman is. Something made of thread and thrum, a mere botch of all and some. Pieces, patches, ropes of hair, inlaid garbage everywhere. Outside silk and outside lawn, scenes to cheat us, neatly drawn. False in legs and false in thighs, false in breast, teeth, hair, and eyes. False in head and false enough. Only true in shreds and stuff."
Oh my goodness.
He had clearly been turned down recently. He's not feeling good.
This may reveal more about the poet than about the...
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm not saying these are examples of love. This is absolutely not true. He's having a bad day. And then here's another one. It's from an unknown author. It's called Faults, Male and Female. "Men, they have many faults, but women, only two.
Oh.
Everything they say and everything they do."
Is that the entire poem? No, there's more.
That's it. No, that's the whole thing.
That's good.
Oh, hey, we should, let's say...
One more?
No, that one is... I was trying to find one that was about men being terrible, but I'll have to keep looking.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I like, so we started with bad advice and ended with bad poetry, so I feel like these are good bookends for this episode. So go forth and have a great Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, seriously.
I guess what's the takeaway? The takeaway is that... love, you need... I don't know what the takeaway is. We had a lot of takeaways today.
Experience. So I like what AJ was just saying. So I think there are kind of two levels to beauty. So there should be a beauty that is always pointing us toward higher and toward more, but there's also the beauty in the day-to-day. There's the love in the day-to-day, and we should celebrate and experience both of those things.
Yeah.
So
here, I got one. Okay. I got one against men, just to even things out.
Great.
This is by Dorothy Parker. It's called Men. "They hail you as their morning star because you are the way you are. If you return the sentiment, they'll try to make you different. And once they have you safe and sound, they want to change you all around. Your moods and ways they put a curse on. They'd make of you another person. Wow. They cannot let you get your person. They cannot let you get your gait. They influence and educate. They'd alter all that they admired. They make me sick. They make me tired. And that's by Dorothy Parker.
Perfect. That's good.
All right, on that charming note.
So if you're heading off into Valentine's Day, I guess revel in that's not how you're feeling as you head into Valentine's Day, or it is how you're feeling, and you can think about those poems and then binge some Netflix and have a great day. Yeah, have a great day. Commiserate with our poets and move on.
Authenticity, humility, and service. I think that's the mix.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good.
It feels like it should be our new slogan or something. Okay, good.
It's like the lamest French Revolution ever.
So instead of buckle up for knowledge, it's authenticity, humility, service.
I like it.
Fraternité, égalité.
All right. Thanks for listening. This has been Classical Stuff You Should Know. You can catch us on Twitter with our handle at Classical Stuff, CLSSCAL. You can check out our website. Is there stuff at the end of that? Yeah, it's
Classical Stuff.
Classical Stuff. And then you can check out our website, classicalstuff.net. You can email us. Please do email us. We try to return as many of those as we possibly can at classicalstuff@veritasacademy.net. And I think that's it. So thank you for listening. And this is the Classical Stuff Boys signing off.
Bye.
Ciao.